And we should be live. Welcome everybody to another live stream repair. We've got 4 pods that have showed up today for repair with a whole suite of different issues. We're pretty much going to be touching on almost everything that you could repair on these. We'll start off with Eric's with no power, then we'll move on to manuals with constant popping. After that, we'll go on to Jonathan's with death farts, and we'll wrap up today with Size that also has no power. So, our drink of choice today is some homemade iced tea, keeping it nice and PG. Without further delay, let's crack on into this. Or actually, before we do that, almost forgot, let's go ahead and just sanity check here. Make sure that this thing indeed does not power on. Don't want to be wasting our time on blinkies, do we? Alright, so definitely no power there. Pretty typical power draw at the wall there of a shorted diode on the amplifier. So let's crack it open now. I'm going to rip that cable off and get that set somewhere safe where it won't get all dirty and ran over. And we're going to get our spudger and start. Let's get that underneath the top plastic cover and pry that off. Lovely. Okay. Now let's work on that display. And then we'll pry that display off, making sure we get under both layers of this display and not just the plastic on top. Very good. You can see we've got under both of those layers there, so let's go ahead and pry that off. Let's see. Here we go. Adhesive put a bit of a fight up there, but we got it off. Set that display to the side, and we'll just stick this adhesive back down. While we're thinking about it, it's not going to affect us taking this back apart. Just so we don't have to do it later. Alright. Let's get this frame out. Ah, that's not a good sign. I have a feeling when we get this frame and logic board out of the way, we're going to see a little bit of, we're going to see some broken bits in here. Most likely from possibly being dropped on its head, or who knows. Maybe it's always been like this, because the screw, and I'll show you guys here, but I feel like the screw here probably, here we go, you can see one of our mounting points for the frame is missing, broken off. And as I was saying, the screw was probably holding it in place until we got to it. So who knows how long this has been broken for. Let's get that logic board out. And we've got plenty of these, upper baskets here that we can replace this with. No worries. Let's get a nice view on that side there. All right. And if we were desperate, we could probably just glue this piece back on here. However, this HomePod that this guy sent in, it was actually a local drop-off. He's driving around the country right now, so I wouldn't want to just glue this back together out of fear that it may get tossed around a bit in the back of the car on his way back home and end up breaking this off again. So we're just going to replace this whole basket here. And again, I've got plenty of these, so I'm not going to charge anything extra just for some unforeseen physical damage that we can easily rectify here. I've got plenty of these top baskets here to not worry about giving a few away if need be. It's a funny coincidence, isn't it? Yesterday, well, after so long, we've fixed so many of these, and I haven't had any of these baskets coming in broken very often. But yesterday, after a very long time of not seeing that, we suddenly saw we actually cracked the basket taking it off, but it must have been on its way out anyways. And then today, we've got this one that's broken. It's always weird how, like, the rarer issues tend to, like, cluster up in terms of when I see them. It's like I see a whole bunch of weird one-off issues across 1 or 2 days, and then the next few weeks it'll just be pretty vanilla repairs, you know, standard no power, death farts, what have you. Enough rambling, let's pry this basket off here. The pry of shame. Oh yeah, this one doesn't want to give up, does it? Is static noise when idle normal? So you're saying your HomePod has static noise and your MacBook doesn't? Is that what you're making is that what you're comparing? A couple of mine around the house I've noticed have this like really quiet like static noise like you're talking about. Haven't had the chance to take those apart and investigate deeper because otherwise they seem to work perfectly fine. They've just got this weird background static. I think you're probably hearing the same thing I'm talking about here, but hasn't seemed to affect the performance of any of my HomePods. Alright, that seems ready to pull off. Yeah, too easy. So we'll go ahead and put a new one of these on here when we go to reassemble that, so we'll chuck that in the bin. And let's get this woofer off of here. There we go. Get this woofer lifted on out. Easy peasy. Let's just peek the condition of that woofer while we've got it out and apart. It feels nice and smooth. We've got a nice vibrant copper voice coil through that inspection port in there. And the sniff test smells great. Smells like a HomePod subwoofer. So let's get these next few layers out of the way. That one's really glued in there. Yeah, there we go. Set that to the side. Get this out. Let's find another replacement basket before we forget. Got one right here, screws and all ready to go. Cool. So let's get our power supply and amplifier out. Yeah, the amplifier probably went into low power mode. After 10 minutes of inactivity, like if the HomePod isn't doing anything, it'll go into a low power state and cut the power to the amplifier. And then any activity that will cause the HomePod to wake up and or produce sound again, of course it'll turn the amplifier back on, and you may get that quiet pop, or you may hear some very quiet static noises. But I generally don't. I'm generally not concerned with those quieter sounds that they make, so long as that's their only problem. If they work fine otherwise, then I wouldn't be too concerned about it. and amp be free. Let's get a sip of our tea. And let's grab our close-up. And let's take a closer look at our likely culprit here. I can already see it. 1748K on that diode there. That is almost certainly the cause of our no power issue here. That diode is likely shorted out and gone bad. So, based on personal experience and seeing that date code 1748K on that power diode there, I'm pretty certain that that's what's going on. So we're just going to skip any sort of testing and just jump right into the replacement here. Once we replace this diode, we will power this board on and give it a quick check to see, of course, that our no power repair worked and that we were right, but check and see if there's any DC offset that needs to be taken care of while we're in here. Give it up. Easy peasy. Excuse me. Ooh. Okay. So here's our new diode. We've got a new tube of flux. It is an absolute unit, 30 cc. It's 3 times as large as the normal tubes that I get, but I go through them fast enough at this point. I need the big stuff. It's a little unwieldy here, but let's get some flux onto our diode. We'll put some flux onto those pads on the board. Get some fresh solder onto that new diode, and then we'll put it on. Beautiful. Here we go. It's decently centered. We'll let the flow of solder do the hard work of perfectly lining that up. Keep holding that down until it cools off. See that solder solidify right now. Easy peasy. Let's clean that up a little bit. Give ourselves a little time for the board to cool down here. And we'll give this a power and DC offset test. No need to worry about getting all the flux off of here, just going to make it somewhat presentable and clean off the excess. And let's give that a test. Got our power supply put on there. Gonna get a logic cable. And a good logic board so we can test it for sound and any DC offset, of course. Let's get this junk out of the way. Connect our subwoofer. We've got our multimeter over here. We've got that into DC millivolts mode. Let's grab a power cable, if I can locate it. Ah, here we go. And let's boot this baby up. No power repair works. We've got power. Let's give that a chance to boot up and we will test for DC offset. Ready to test. What do we got? We've got a very spectacular result of less than 1 millivolt of DC offset. Spectacular results here. Anything below 10 millivolts is ideal, but really just try to keep it under 50 millivolts and you're good. Any more than that, or if it was steadily growing at an alarming rate, then that would be cause to replace those capacitors. But this one is behaving perfectly. And we don't hear any popping. So this one is ready to go. Let's get these test parts off of it and then we can put it back into their HomePod and move on to the next one. Get that multimeter out of the way. Bring their HomePod shell back in here. And begin our reassembly. Oh no! Get back here. Okay, let's get that logic cable reconnected to the amplifier down there. Don't want to forget that. We do not want to forget that. Get that power supply installed. Put its screws into place. Very good. That shouldn't cause a problem. Get that fresh, unbroken basket put on here. already got screws in it, so it should be pretty easy for us here. Just pop that on. Okay. Let's make sure that's stuck on there nice and well so it doesn't rattle around. last piece here. Let's get our top cover put back on. Slap some heat on that. Here we go. Right. Time for the moment of truth. Grab some power, plug that in, and drum roll please. Ba-ba-boo-wee. Celebratory sip. That's the good stuff. There we go. And let's check that it's got sound and volume buttons are evenly lit up.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
We got
For
sound.
more info.
And our volume buttons light up nice and even. Awesome. So our first HomePod here is fixed. Now, let's get that set to the side. And move on to our second HomePod here today. We gotta find a place to put this. Oh boy. Okay. Second HomePod. What do we got? Got a bunch of shit here. Ah, yes. Manuel. Or Manuel. Manuel. You say a word enough times, it starts to sound really funny. That's creative. Not bad. We've got some pretty decent packing here. This looks like the box opened up in transit, so I always recommend taping this box together when you send them in so you can avoid this, which results in, oh, okay, I see what they did here. So they just wrapped the cable up like that, or it came up. In any case, this is why I recommend taping your boxes together, because what'll happen is the box will otherwise start to separate, and then the power cable starts to creep up around the HomePod here, and it will start to leave imprints and dents in your mesh. But if it's like a beater HomePod and you don't really care about how it looks, it doesn't really matter too much. And usually as we saw here on this one, you can get away with it without any damage. But it's always my recommendation just to avoid that. Not the end of the world. I'm just being picky. Okay. So this one has constant popping. Let's get that plugged into power and see what it's doing. Alright, very good. It's got power. Okay. Let's wake this up and see.
I'm having trouble connecting
Wow.
to the internet. For more info.
Okay, so that's a pretty gnarly pop. The bass sounds like it still works, so that's a good sign. But let's see when we unplug it from power. Yeah, we got some weird clicking here.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
Let's unplug it from power and listen to how severe that pop is. Oh. Felt it in the soul. Let's tear this one on down and see what's going on. Almost certainly we've got a gnarly case of too much DC offset here. Or perhaps maybe some DC offset with a little bit of roasted resistor. Let's find out. Very good. Oh, I think it's ready to pry off by hand. Oh, wow. That was way too easy. Check out that woofer. Passes the sniff test. Oh, someone is here to pick up their fixed HomePod. I will be right back. Just give me a quick minute or 5. Take a break. We're back. Let's continue. Let's see, where were we? Oh yeah, we were taking this one apart. That's right. It is hot outside. Hot and humid. I was only out there for like less than a minute and I'm already dripping sweat. I gotta tell you though, the people's reactions when they get their HomePods back and they're working is, it's almost worth it in and of itself. Alright, what do we got going on here? We've got a roasted resistor next to the subwoofer connector there. That's that 10 ohm resistor that loves to be a victim of that DC offset. You can see it's pretty clearly blown to pieces there. That's not good, but we've got plenty of those to replace that. I'm curious what date code we have on our diode here. Completely unrelated to their issues, but you see, so we've got 1746K on that diode, and it looks to be in okay condition, but just for preventative maintenance here, we're going to replace this power diode just like we did on the last one there, but just to avoid the dreaded no power issue a few months down the road. So let's flip this around, just do one quick check over everything, and everything else looks to be good. So here's our plan. We're going to go ahead and replace that power diode over here just to make sure that they don't experience no power issues in the future. Our main focus, however, is the popping. So we're going to replace this resistor, this 10 ohm resistor right here, and then we're going to flip it around and we're going to replace our four 10 microfarad capacitors right here. And these are responsible for filtering out that DC offset from the amplifier. So they're probably not doing their job anymore, and probably why this resistor blew out. So let's get all those parts replaced and give it a quick test. And of course we'll start with our power diode here. Again, has nothing to do with their popping issues, but this is purely for preventative measures. It only takes us an extra couple minutes to swap it out, and these are only $1 a piece, so no big deal to just do it every time for every pod we take apart. There we go. Set that into the pile. Let's flip this around and take off that old nasty resistor there. Let's see. I've got a piece of metal floating around here somewhere that I used to shield that plastic connector from the heat, because we don't want to melt that. Here we go. Yeah, that'll shield that plastic connector and that big tall capacitor right next to it. And then we're going to go to town with the heat on this guy until it decides to, more likely than not, probably just flake off instead of just coming off as a single unit here. And to make this a little easier, potentially, let's get some flux on that too. Man, I tell you, this tube is unwieldy for one hand. Yep, see, it's just breaking apart, but that's no problem. Well, there's what's left of it. We'll set that in the graveyard. And then last but not least, we'll flip this board around and get those filtering capacitors taken off. And then we'll put new stuff on here. Ooh, it's hot. Hot, 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 hot. Very cool. We shall now put some flux on these pads and put some new capacitors on there. Not before we grab our soldering iron and put some fresh solder onto those pads. There we go. Didn't create any shorts in there. All right. Let's grab a fresh set of caps. Let's put these new caps on. One thing that I just realized I totally forgot to do was actually test this and see how much DC offset it actually has before taking the old parts off, but that's not a big deal. We will, of course, test it again when we get this all fixed up. Bollocks. I'm trying to find a solid place to put this down. There we go. Excuse me. And let's be, oh. Get over here. Butterfingers today. Alright, first one is on. 2 for 2, very good. I didn't get that one on there very well. Final capacitor. Nice and solid joints, nice and even. Not touching anything else nearby. All right. Let's flip this around. Get ourselves a new resistor on here. All right, let's send it. All right, and then for good measure, we can touch that up with our iron. Beautiful. Well, relatively speaking. Let's get that power diode and we'll be ready to test this board. Oh no! You guys are going for a trip. Goodbye. There is a capacitor on my diode. Get out of here. Sweet. Got all the components that we wanted replaced on here, so let's power it on up. Ooh, it's still really hot. Let's give that a sec to cool down. Take a sip of tea. We got a little more flux on there. We can clean up. There we go. Still pretty hot. Okay. Time for a test. Alright, so we've got a new 10 ohm resistor for the subwoofer. We've got a whole new set of 10 microfarad capacitors for the DC filtering, and for good measure we got a new power diode. So let's boot this up and see, well, let's see first of all if it still has the severe popping when you wake it up, and if it's got any DC offset still. And of course my meter is acting up. There we go. My meter's acting weird. Let's hope this reads right. I suppose just for sanity check, we can set this to 20 volts and see if it reads this 9-volt battery fine. Oh, well, I'm plugging it into the woofer now, so shouldn't do that. Alright. I didn't hear any popping when that turned on. Immaculate. And of course my meter is still acting up. But we appear to have .04 volts. It's hard to tell if it's my meter or the offset here. But what we can do is just unplug and plug the woofer in a few times with the amplifier on, being very careful of course, and see if we hear any popping as we do that. No. I don't hear nothing. Come here, Siri. Oh, I tricked her. Come on, Siri. Alright, let's just force power cycle this puppy. I confused Siri. I don't know why my meter's acting up now. Do I have another one? Ah, shoot. Alright, we're gonna have to count on these results here. So 25 millivolts. 25 millivolts and staying pretty steady there. That's about, well, that's halfway below our intended target. A little higher than our ideal target, but far from anything that'll cause issues, and certainly much more improved than what it was previously before. So, let's go ahead and tear this down, reassemble it in their shell. And then we can do some sound testing after the stream to make sure that this one's nice and solid. Come on out. Come on. Get out of here. There we go. Okay. We are missing a screw for the tweeter. Where has that gone? Huh. Well, no worries, I've got plenty of extra screws. Alright. Let's give this a test, and then we will factory reset it and do some extended sound testing after the stream just to make sure that this won't have any issues that crop up. Drum roll, please.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet. For more info, I'm having trouble.
Everything appears to be in great working order. Very good. Let's get our text status updated here and move on to the next HomePod. Woo! And no popping. Very nice. Let's put that one away. And grab, let's see, who's next? Jonathan. Jonathan. Let's open that one up. Try not to show my, well, no, I don't care if I show my address, but other people's addresses. £7, 4 ounces. So billed as 8 pounds because America. Wow, this is very well packed. Very nice. Should be able to take this off here. Ah, there we go. Oh, beautiful. And I bet under here we have our power cable. Yep. We don't need to use theirs. Very nicely packed. Well done, sir. Or ma'am. So let's see. This one has death farts? Yeah. Let's connect this to power and see what the situation is. Yeah, all white so far today. It's a funny observation. I think if my memory serves correct, I feel, if my bias serves correct, I should say, I feel like I get way more white ones than gray ones. Not to say that the white ones are more prone to issues than the gray ones. Obviously, that just probably simply means people have more white ones than black ones. But anyways, let's plug this into power. And it should, yep, it should power up. Alright, so it's up, but the amplifier has not been powered on yet, so let's go ahead and do that. Oh,
I'm having trouble connecting to the
that was a pop. And then listen after I unplug it. Don't listen to the sound of me unplugging the power cable. After about half a second after I unplug this, listen to the pop. Oh. Roblox oof sound.mp3. What are we gonna do with you, my guy? Well, we're gonna take you apart. We're gonna see what's going on inside. I'm going to wager a guess with that loud of a pop, we've probably got a couple 100 millivolts of DC offset going on here. And it's a good thing that they sent this in when they did, because this can very well damage and destroy your subwoofer speaker, which will cost you just a little more if you send it in to me for repair. But anyways, as I was saying, it's good that they sent this in when they did, because we don't want more damage than it's already got. Looks like the top has got a teeny tiny little crack in it on the edge there, so we'll want to be careful prying around that. Playing games. This thing is stuck on there. What the heck? Goodness. Wow. Well, we didn't damage it at all. That's good. It was just really stuck on there. Wow. True that. I do agree though, the white looks prettier in my opinion than the space gray ones. That said, the space gray ones hide dirt and smudges way better than the white ones do. You breathe on the white ones and they'll get dirty. God help all the people with white HomePods in their kitchens. Oh yeah, and I spoke to Eric, the first HomePod that we just fixed up at the beginning of our stream here today. I spoke to him when he dropped by here and picked it up, and I can't remember if he told me in an email or not, but he did confirm that that HomePod with the physical damage to the speaker basket was damaged, or it was previously dropped, so that explains why that had some physical damage in there. But like I said, I've got a handful of certain parts here that aren't going anywhere anytime soon, so might as well put them to good use. I think you're the only one I've seen using the new iOS 16 feature. Oh yeah, remind me what exactly you're talking about with the new iOS 16. Did we forget a screw? No, we did not. Wow, that's coming up real easy. Always nice to get one that doesn't want to fight back and just wants to get fixed. Yeah. And I think this is loose enough to pry by hand. Maybe from over here. Here maybe. Oh. Yeah. Easy peasy. No casualties. Alright, let's get that woofer out, shall we? Oh, that screws hard. Ah, there we go. Yeah, Sai, you'll have to remind me what iOS 16 feature you're actually referring to, because I'm not sure I know which one you're talking about. Oops. Let's check this woofer. Feels good. Voice coil still looks good. Smells great. No issues or damage to the subwoofer, so that's good. We caught our death farts and DC offset problem before it did any damage to that woofer. Alright, let's get up close now. Oh, you're talking about using your phone as a camera. I am not using iOS 16 or its features to do this. I'm actually using an application called Droid Cam. It's one word, and despite the name, it is available not just on Android but also on iOS. And personally, I haven't compared it to Apple's up-and-coming feature where they let you use your phone as a webcam, but from personal experience and testing dozens of other phone applications that allow you to use your phone camera as your OBS camera. I use OBS, or Open Broadcast Software, on a Windows PC, and I've just got a couple of different iPhones around my desk plugged in via USB, and I use Droid Cam to stream my phone cameras and use them as OBS cameras. And the video quality from Droid Cam and the reliability of it, not to mention the handful of features that it has, and just basic camera functions in a camera app, like tap to focus. This has been the all-around best pick for me personally. So if you're looking for turning your iPhone or even your Android phone, it doesn't matter how old it is at this point. This thing runs on dang near everything. You can turn your phone into a Wi-Fi or USB camera to stream into OBS. And I'll take you guys on a quick little tour setup here, might as well. Let's switch cameras. So, oh, I accidentally unplugged the cable. I'm dumb. One second. There we go. So, here's the workstation, of course. Pretty simple setup. We've just got our table and our mat, and then we've got our monitor there to watch OBS and switch between our cameras. Then we've got our other monitor here for checking out the YouTube chat and the stream health and what have you. And then over there we've got our multimeter and soldering stations. And then we've got our parts shelf. And then if we go back to our table and look up, this is actually where my main camera is at. It's just an iPhone 11 Pro Max with a busted screen and back glass, but the cameras work perfectly fine. So and this is all I use this phone for, is literally just as a streaming camera. So not really that motivated to replace the screen and back glass on this if it works perfectly fine for what it is currently being used for. And then we've got a Galaxy Note 8 right there. and that is pointed to and zoomed into the multimeter, which is right there. And our streaming PC is this teeny tiny little nug up here, and I've got a USB-C dock to give myself some extra ports and display outs, and yeah, that's the setup. And then of course we've got a phone mount here, and I just take this phone, set it down on top of that, and there you go. That's the tour. It's an absolute mess in here right now, but you know what they say, that's a sign of a busy mind. It's days that I don't have anything to do that I go through and almost forgot a screw there. It's days when I don't have anything to do where I go through my room and clean it all up and reorganize everything. And then it looks and feels really nice, and then of course you get, 5 or 6 HomePods showing up for repair one day and you gotta messy it all up again. But it's always fun to reorganize everything. Must be some kind of like OCD thing. Nah, my room's too messy for me to have OCD. Or is it? Amp be gone. Okay, now before we do any repairs on this, let's get a baseline of the current behavior and see how much DC offset we're trying to combat here. So let's just grab the parts that we need to power this on real quick and do just that. And hopefully our multimeter will behave for us so we can get a good baseline here. But go ahead and place your bets. How much DC offset do you think this thing is cranking out, considering how loud those pops were when we were testing it? My bet is we're going to power it on and it's going to start at around 150, 175 millivolts and then very quickly creep up to 200 to 300 within a matter of 15, 20 seconds. Talking on updating OS, I am personally scared updating my HomePods after the versions that bricked HomePods. Mine are out of warranty. So I've got a couple dozen HomePods around the house, right? I pretty much push updates to all of them as soon as those updates come out. I'll take that back. I wait about a day. I check Reddit and see if anybody else's HomePods are catastrophically failing from the latest update. But after that, I'll just go and push the update to all of my HomePods. And so long as you don't lose power suddenly during your software update, there should be very low to no risk for you to update it. If it happens, if it breaks itself during a normal update and it never lost any power, then I feel like that's a very rare scenario, but it does happen. More often, most often, people get blinking volume buttons from interrupted software updates. So the unfortunate thing is there's no like spare logic boards. We can't buy logic boards. We can't repair bricked ones. So these are in very short supply, and there's just no way around it other than spending big bucks on another working HomePod and taking the logic board. But at that point, you've got the working HomePod. What's the point? So, all Apple needs to do, in theory, is give us the IPSW for these HomePods. They give us IPSWs for all their other products, right? Why not HomePods? Enough ranting. Gotta get these fixed up so we can eat some food. Starting to feel the hunger. Okay, let's get our multimeter put up here too. And okay, well our meter seems to be behaving. Seems to be. Let's get this powered on and see how much DC offset we got here. Last chance to place your bets. Alright, and then let's wake up that amplifier. Oh. Okay, so our meter's not... There we go. We just had a crappy connection there. And it's still kind of crappy. Alright, so we're well past 200 millivolts. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we are fast approaching 800 millivolts, so I was way off. And then check this out. If we come here, we disconnect and reconnect the woofer, we can not only hear the popping, but we can see the woofer move too. Yeah, gnarly. And then what happens when we well, we already got it disconnected, so we know what we're trying to fix up here. Well past 700 millivolts of DC offset, which over the course of a few minutes and a few bump and beats through it, that will easily grow well past a couple of volts and trigger some death farts. The death farts is actually the result of the amplifier forcing a restart in an attempt to well, it's just behavior that's programmed into the amplifier. If it sees too much DC being sent to the woofer, it'll give itself a forced restart there and hopefully try to save your woofer from cooking itself. But at that point, if it's already triggering death farts, you're getting pretty close to that. So okay, let's switch over to the close-up camera. And let's just do a quick visual inspection here. Our 10 ohm resistor next to the subwoofer still looks to be in good working order. That's good. Looking for any components that may have signs of overheating. For example, if we look at the main, I believe this is the main DAC, but I could be wrong. I think this does a few things on the amplifier. But anyways, I've seen a couple of these chips with the lettering on the top of it, kind of like different colors than the rest of them. It's not necessarily a sign that it's failed, but it does mean that it's ran pretty hot in the past. But this, it looks fine. I'm gonna just keep going around. Keep going around, everything looks good. We've got a date code on our power diode there of 1746K. So we're going to replace this even though this powers on without a problem. Like I say every time, we don't want to fix this for one problem and ignore a known common problem elsewhere and fix this for death farts, and then a month down the road that they suddenly have no power because these diodes are crap. So we're going to replace this just for good measure. Let's flip this around. Check the other side. I've got a little bit of fuzz there. That probably came from me. Amplifier IC looks to be alright. Looks like it's probably ran a little hot, but that's totally fine. We got the DAC for the subwoofer. Those are the capacitors that we are going to replace right here. Everything else looks really good. Alright. Let's pull some parts and do some fixing. Let's start with that power diode, just so we don't forget it. Go ahead and pull that on off. Hello again, Dr. Oliver Kai. Welcome to the stream. Oh yeah, that came off no problem. We'll set that old diode to the side, and then let's flip this board around and get those capacitors off. Ooh, hot, 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 hot. Super hot. So hot. Come on. Get out. Oh, whew. Hot, 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 hot. Let's put some flux onto our board. Grab some fresh capacitors. I've been experimenting with like a GoPro mounted to my forehead for like a first person view on these repairs, but I can't get the streaming quality. Either I can get a really good high quality stream from it, but it's super delayed, or I get a really low quality stream, but it's low latency. So I'd like to crack that one. Yes, so we're doing a death fart repair right now. We tested with our multimeter before any repairs on here just to see how much DC is being shot into the subwoofer, and we saw 700 to 800 millivolts and very quickly growing. So the goal here is to get that get these capacitors replaced, and hopefully see that DC offset measurement drop down to no more than 50 millivolts, but ideally less than 10 millivolts. Let's get some fresh solder on there. Beautiful. A little more flux and then we'll begin putting new parts on. This won't just help with death farts. This should completely correct the root problem that triggers the death farts. So your multimeter might not be the problem. What numbers do you see fluctuate? And just by the way, if you don't have a solid connection with your multimeter probes on your subwoofer, you're gonna see that number bounce around too, but I'm curious what numbers you're actually seeing. And I apologize if you've said this before. So when you're testing for DC offset on your amplifier, there's two things that you want to look for. You want to see how much DC it currently has and whether or not that number is steadily increasing, either greater towards positive or more negative. But you want to keep that number below 50 millivolts. It doesn't matter if it's bouncing around as long as it's below about 50 millivolts. But I'm curious what your numbers are jumping around to. Like, what exactly is it saying? How much do you actually see it fluctuating? From 10 to 60 or 70, if you leave it sitting for a few minutes without letting the amplifier go to sleep, does it stay, like, does it ever get higher than 60 or 70, or is it pretty much constantly fluctuating between 10 to 70? Because that's not, that's not the end of the world, but it's not ideal numbers, but it's not the end of the world, and I wouldn't expect something as low as 60 to 70 millivolts causing issues. Are you playing music while you're testing, or not? Oh, yeah, if you're holding it to the woofer, that might do it. You'll want to, okay, good. So you're not playing music while you're testing. That's good. If you're holding the probes to the woofer, we'll go ahead and do that with ours. We'll do that with ours. but that can cause your measurement there to jump around. As long as you see, like, if it bounces up to 60 or 70 and it doesn't go higher than that, I would probably just leave it alone. It's a little higher than that 50 millivolt target, but it's not enough to cause any damage. It's far from anything that would cause damage. Alright. New caps are on. They feel nice and solid. Oh, you already changed it. Oh, that's right. No, I remember now. Yeah, you did tell me this already. Yeah, if you did the repair and it's now below. Do you remember how much DC offset you saw before the repair? Or if you checked? To my knowledge, there aren't great ways to test these capacitors because they can test good, but still not function the way that they were intended. Especially as they warm up. You know, once the hotter they get, the less capacitance that they're going to have, and that's just inherent with all of these types of capacitors. But it's the tolerance. It's how much capacitance they lose when they get hotter that partially matters, and that's usually what happens with these. Is they just go bad over time, and on top of that, the hotter they get, the worse they get. So it's just more of a compounding issue. Okay. if you're going to fix more than a couple of HomePods, or you intend on regularly fixing HomePods, yeah, definitely, it's. I would absolutely recommend getting a whole set of spare parts so that you can more easily test things outside of the HomePod. But if you're just fixing one or two like one-off HomePods, then it's a bit of an expense to get all of those parts just to diagnose one or two HomePods. You can do pretty much everything you need to do without it. It just takes a little more time. You got to throw it back together, test it, take it back apart. I don't have any reason to believe that your woofer would be bad, though. Your woofer is probably A-okay. If it produces bass, it's probably just fine. And if your absolute DC offset, like at the end of the day, no matter how much it grows or fluctuates, as long as it doesn't fluctuate or grow beyond that 60 or 70 millivolts, I would be okay with that. That's hot. Also, something to keep in mind, if you go and if you're testing like right after you replace these caps, they're still going to be hot. So that's going to affect your the accuracy of your measurement as well. Ideally, you want to test your offset here at least 24 to 48 hours after you've applied heat to those capacitors, so that way they've got the full amount of time necessary and according to their spec to reset and sort of break in. It's actually recommended from the manufacturer that you put them through a specific heat cycle in order to break them in or reset them. After, over time, after a few years, these capacitors will just inherently start to lose their capacitance a little bit, and the manufacturer recommends that you just stick some heat on them, a certain amount of heat for a certain amount of time. I don't know off the top of my head, but you can essentially just reheat the capacitors into specification again. But that's not what I do on these death fart repairs. We just go on in and replace them regardless, because we don't know if it's the natural decay of their capacitance over time or if they are in fact failed. So we just go in and we replace all four of them, check for DC offset without waiting. As long as we're within a reasonable ballpark, then we are good to go. And this is a really fun, like, if you're not doing this as a business, you're just doing this for fun. Like, this is thoroughly enjoyable. Like, once you get the hang of taking it apart and the feel for various techniques, a lot of this just comes with experience and just lots of practice of opening them and closing them back up. So it's really fun once you get past that initial like fear of like, oh my god, am I gonna break this taking it apart kind of thing. Okay, multimeter powered on. Let's make sure that we've got a good connection there, and yeah, this feels loose, so let's tighten that up. Okay, let's boot this baby up. Yeah, I've got to go back and redo the first HomePod that I ever tried to and fixed for myself, because since then I've learned a few better techniques on how to put that mesh back into the frame on the top. I think the first time I did it, I just kind of like slapped everything back on and it worked. So I was like, oh, cool. Time to do some more research and try to see if this is like a viable like thing to do for other people and like make some documentation. And well, fast forward like 8-10 months and here we are. So this is powered on now. Let's go on ahead and wake up the amplifier and see how much DC offset we've got. And would you look at that? Far below the 50 millivolt target, and actually even less than our 10 millivolt ideal target. Very excellent results. Before our repairs here, we saw, what was it, like 700, 800 millivolts? And now we're seeing a very, very cool 4 millivolts, and it seems to be dropping a little more too. So probably still a little bit of heat soak in there, and like I was saying earlier, likely some of the capacitor break-in and blah 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 blah. Anyways, you saw it for yourself. 700 to 800 millivolts before. All we did was replace those capacitors, and now we've got an excellent result of 3 millivolts. If it sleeps, it goes negative? No. So when the amplifier goes to sleep after 10 minutes of inactivity, it's just going to completely cut the power. So you're not going to see any DC on the woofer when it goes into standby at that point. It should pretty much be zero. Because at that point, the amplifier circuit for the subwoofers no longer got power, so it's not producing any DC to be amplified in the first place. So when it sleeps, you shouldn't see anything on here because the amp isn't on. If you see your DC bias like negative, that's fine. It does when I say the target is no more than 50 millivolts, that could be plus or positive or negative. 50 millivolts of positive DC is just as bad as 50 millivolts of negative DC. 700 millivolts of positive DC bias is just as bad as 700 millivolts of negative DC bias. All you care about is not whether it's positive or negative, but just the absolute value of that DC measurement that you're seeing on your meter. When the amplifier goes to sleep, it cuts the power to the amp, and you won't see any DC coming on the woofer at all. Did I get anywhere with the guy who wanted to test dumping and reflashing the firmware? Unfortunately, I responded to his email, and I haven't heard back from him. Like, he hasn't responded. So I don't know if his mail server blocked my reply, if my mail server didn't send it, or if they were just trying to scam me or hack into my shit or something. I don't know. I'm kind of sad about that, but I'm gonna send them another email from just my regular Gmail account, in the off chance that somebody's mail server isn't operating the way that it should or blocking something. And fingers crossed they aren't trying to take advantage of me here, and they've actually got something going on here. It would be such a game changer if we would be able to reflash these. I mean, I've got all of these freaking bricked boards. I've just got a stack of them waiting for the day that Apple so graciously allows us to restore a $300 speaker. But until then, they can sit there in a stack looking pretty, I guess. Maybe good for parts for other board components on logic boards, but it's really unfortunate. I'm sitting on like a dozen or so bricked logic boards, and people all the time ask me if I've got any logic boards to sell for them, and it's unfortunate. I would if we had a way to just simply restore the software on them, and we don't. So big thanks to you, Apple, for that. You make good shit, but you also don't. Love-hate relationship with them. I often find myself throwing my I think it's a 2020 MacBook Pro. Very often I find myself throwing that thing to the side and breaking out the 2014 MacBook Pro or my 2011 MacBook Pro and using those instead, just because it runs like garbage, and I leave the thing closed in sleep for a day and the battery's dead. It's ugh. I just want to use it. And they make it so painful sometimes. It's like I wake it up from sleep and it like takes 5 minutes for the thing to settle down before I can actually use it. Welcome to the chat, Ruvim. You're welcome to ask your question in the chat here, or I'll check my email here, and I think I've got like 15 or 20 to get through today. On top of letting everybody know whose HomePods were fixed during our stream today, but feel free to ask away. Yeah. Oh, Nick. That does remind me. In a weird, strange coincidence, not the same guy that emailed me the first time about dumping good firmware. Somebody else, I believe from Africa or Uganda, emailed me saying something pretty similar. They just needed help connecting their HomePod via USB so that they can experiment some more. We did have a little bit of back and forth, so I know that they're alive and doing all right. But I shot them information on how to connect their HomePod via USB to a Mac. I've actually got that USB cable right here. You can see I've got the logic board cable and the debug pins from the bottom of the HomePod soldered into a USB cable. I basically just shot him a photo and the wiring guide on how I did this, and I haven't heard from them in the past few days. They did ask for my WhatsApp, and I don't have a WhatsApp, and I don't like doing text messaging and calls and all that because I like to keep everything in email for a few reasons. One, if I keep everything in email, then I know where they're all at. They're all in the one spot. Number two, email is the easiest for me to check in on and spend the time replying and reading emails when I can. Whereas the phone calls and the text messages, those have obviously with the phone calls, that's like a, hey, I need your attention right now, please give me your time kind of thing. And I very rarely have the time or patience, honestly, to talk to people on the phone. Not to mention, I have a hard time hearing what people are saying on the phone. It's not like I have a hard time hearing it per se, but more so like understanding the words that are coming out of their mouth. And I think it has to do with the fact that obviously I'm holding my phone up to my face, but I'm only getting the sound of their voice through one ear. I notice when I take phone calls on speaker, or if I've got like headphones in for phone calls, I have a much better time understanding what people are saying. And then the text messages, it's kind of similar. When people text me, I feel like usually people have an expectation for a prompt response, and to be quite honest, things can get so busy that I might read that message or miss it and then completely forget about it. So I love emails, and that's where I prefer to keep all of my communication. And for those reasons, keeps it all in one space, easy to search through and keep organized, and allows me to take the time to respond and chat with people when I have the time, as opposed to the whole WhatsApp and instant messaging and phone calls. It can, if I'm on the phone for 15-20 minutes with somebody, that's time that I could be spending doing a stream and doing repairs or working on something else. But at the end of the day, a lot of times, I'm relaxing on the couch and, catching up on, a Netflix series or whatever. And those are good opportunities for me to pull out the laptop and go through my emails and catch up for the day. Okay, let's see. We got a couple chat messages. Bought a used HomePod and the reset process works up until the red light begins to spin. The red light spins for maybe 3 to 5 seconds, then there's a faint pop and the light turns off. No reset. Interesting. What could be the problem there? I presume that this HomePod hasn't had any previous repair attempts, in that there isn't any physical damage. In that case, it seems like a software issue on the logic board, but it's interesting that it gets far enough that you hear a faint popping sound. Okay, let me ask you this, Rubim. After you attempt the factory reset, there's the faint pop and the light turns off, does the light go off for a minute or two and then it shows the spinning white circle again? Does it ever boot up to the pulsing white light, indicating that it's like ready for setup, but it never produced like the setup sound? Does it boot up to that pulsing white light? Or after you do the factory reset, does it in the red light spins and then the red light goes away and you hear the faint pop? Does literally nothing happen after that? Yeah, Ruvim, go ahead and do that. Plug it into power. Don't try to factory reset it again, because if you've already tried to factory reset it. Just plug it into power. Tell me what it does. If it shows the spinning white boot animation and then pulses white, or if the spinning white just goes away after a minute. Let me know what it does. Yes, doctor. The screws connect. The screws all around the amplifier, around the perimeter here, are the connections for the tweeter speakers underneath. So if you're missing any of these screws, you might have a less than ideal connection to your tweeters. But if you're just missing like one of these tweeter screws, the pressure from all the other ones being in there should give yourself a decent connection to that tweeter. I've got plenty of screws. I'm willing to just give away if you want to pay for shipping if you ever lose any. And shipping would be like... Oh, but you're not in the U.S., so that wouldn't, it would take a while, but it's doable to ship things like that. out of the few dozen HomePods that I own for myself, I bought two. I bought two of them. Well, I bought one of them and Best Buy screwed up and sent me two. But those were the first two that I bought for myself, like MSRP retail from Best Buy. And those two, I bought those, I think at the end of 2019 is when I bought those. And they, to this day, still function perfectly fine without any death farts or power issues or being bricked. I update them all the time. And I've never personally experienced, well, since then I bought a few dozen more secondhand. Most of them broken to fix up for myself and grow the collection. And I just find it interesting that I get so many of these in for repair from other people, yet I still haven't personally experienced no power issues for myself. And all the HomePods that I get with issues, I've bought knowing that they have issues. So what that tells me is, as common as these failures may seem, in reality, it's probably a very small fraction of the overall number of HomePods actually out there. Oh, you saw the solder mask board repair from yesterday? Did you like that? I still have that board here. Let's take another gander at that. Let's just take a moment to appreciate the absurdity of yesterday's board repair that we wrapped up with. This thing, goodness, it was pretty far from, it was pretty well destroyed. But we got a new diode on there, and then the capacitor that's normally located to the left of that diode, the super tiny one, the pads for it were completely gone. So we reverse engineered, we did a little reverse engineering here and found where that capacitor connects to in the circuit. So we got it connected to the step down converter and the diode, and just look at that lad. I mean, it's not my best work, but it works, and it works well. So, can't knock it. But I thought, I was just completely flabbergasted that between the extent of the damage that this board had and then my repair for it, that this thing not just works, but it works perfectly fine. So we're gonna get that sent back to them. We're gonna do something more to that capacitor so it's not just sticking straight up. We're gonna probably bend it down to the side, make it flush with the board again, and then maybe put some more solder mask down to hold it into place and keep it from vibrating around or vibrating loose off the board over time. But that easily has to be probably top 3 most ridiculous and favorite repairs I've ever done here. Okay, so it's been plugged in for a few minutes without touching it, and there's no lights on. Huh. I wonder what the heck is going on with your pod then, Ruvim. If you touch it, now that it's booted up, Ruvim, if you touch and tap the top of it, does it light up or do anything? Let me get you which cable and PCB mask I used here. So this is the enamel coated wire that I used. I picked this because it's fairly thin. You know, of course, pick the right thickness for your application. But this is the BN Tech Go 24 gauge red enamel coated wire. You'll see this listed on Amazon often as inductor wire or transformer wire. But all you do with this is this is just copper wire, but it's coated in an enamel. So all of this enamel here is a thin layer of insulation that prevents it from shorting out or making contact with other components. And all you need to do to use this for soldering is just get your soldering iron and burn the enamel off where you want to solder onto the wire. And that's it. You can use this to rebuild circuit traces. You can use it for pretty much anything that you would want to use to run wire through a circuit without it accidentally shorting out along the way, because it's got that thin layer of insulation. So that's the enamel wire that I use. BN Tech Go 24 gauge. And then the solder mask that I used, I actually found this kit on Amazon. A lot of the other Amazon listings just had the green, but I picked this one because it came with the green and the black. So that way for, obviously black amplifier boards, I can mask them up and make them look at least close to the original color. But this, I will have to find. If you search on Amazon for PCB solder mask, it's one of the first results that shows up. You'll see the kit that comes with both of these colors, and that's what I got. But I'll try to find the exact Amazon link for that here in a bit. Alright, enough distractions. No response from Siri, no touch. When I plugged it in, had the white light spin for about 10 seconds. So that's interesting. I cannot say for certain what's going on. I can only speculate. But perhaps there's one of two things going on here. There's either a logic board issue, which I kind of feel like is probably not the case here, but there may be something wrong with the software on the logic board. Or there is an issue with the amplifier. If the amplifier isn't able to produce sound, the logic board is able to know that, and the logic board's going to start misbehaving and doing stuff like this. So it's possible your amplifier has gone bad. Something on the amp has gone bad and no longer allows it to produce sound, and that will definitely cause weird issues when you try to boot it up or factory reset it. And it'll also cause the logic board to become unresponsive. So I think it's more likely a problem with your amplifier board, less likely but still possibly a problem with the software on your logic board. In either case, you're going to have to crack it open and do an inspection around that amplifier and see if there's any obvious damage or components that have blown out. That's what makes me think you've got an amp issue, because you have the pop when you factory reset it, but it doesn't produce any other sound outside of that. So it's definitely a puzzling issue there. But if you live in the US or anywhere else and you planned on shipping that in to me, I don't charge anything just to look at it. If I can't fix it, I don't charge you anything other than the shipping to you and back, or to me and back to you. I don't charge anything for no fixes. So if Apple can't fix it and you can afford the shipping, you're welcome to send it in to me, and I'm more than happy to take it apart and see if it's something that we can fix. If it is something that I can fix, then I would generally estimate most repairs, it'll probably end up being around $60 to $80, plus the shipping both ways. But I try to keep things reasonable. Yeah, well, you can't say that so if you, depending on who you end up working with at Apple, you may get somebody who will just replace it for you. So if you end up sending it in to me, what I'll do is I'll take it apart and I'll just do a quick diagnosis to see which part exactly is at fault. We'll see if your logic board is still good, and if it is, then we'll focus on the amplifier. We'll swap in a good known amplifier and see if your logic board still produces sound and allows us to factory reset. And then we'll take a closer look at your amplifier and try to find the root cause of the lack of sound there. I've got a few amplifier boards that have no sound that have me stumped. I still haven't been able to figure out or repair no sound at all from amplifiers. Kind of frustrating, but what can you do with how much time you got? I will get to the bottom of it. I got to the bottom of the DC offset, the death farts. I can figure this one out too. Yeah, I'm on the east side. I presume you're local. Oh shit. Yeah, you're more than welcome to just drop this off if you want after your visit with the Apple store, and we'll take a look at that and see what we can do. Heck, that's great. Yeah, and Apple's not going to tell you what's wrong with it. They're going to tell you it's broken. Here's how much it is for a new one. You know, I had to argue with somebody on Reddit the other day. They said Apple no longer sells HomePods. And I had to disagree with them there. Technically, Apple certainly still does sell HomePods. You generally have to have a broken HomePod and exchange it out of warranty in order for them to sell you a new HomePod. But they were very adamant that Apple does not sell HomePods, and I was very adamant that yes, in fact, they do still sell HomePods, despite being discontinued. If you've got a broken HomePod, they'll more than happily trade you that broken HomePod for another working one for the full MSRP retail price. They will sell you another HomePod. And they were like, well, if you have to have a broken HomePod to trade in and buy another one from him, then that's not buying. That's not how buying works. And I was like, by that logic, Porsche doesn't sell cars. You have to have like like other supercar manufacturers, like I don't know if it was Koenigsegg or Porsche or who it was, but you basically had to be approved in order to buy their car in the first place. You can't just walk into the dealership with all the cash in the world on hand and buy their cars. So by that logic, half of these supercar companies don't sell cars, when in fact they do. I don't know, it was just pedantic arguing, and I think they were more just salty that they couldn't go to Apple and buy another HomePod without having a broken one to trade. But I know this other guy on Reddit that I used to talk to a lot. Hope they're doing well, but their whole spiel was, I shit you not, they just go and they buy broken HomePods for the sole purpose of trading them at Apple for a working one. And they pay for the broken one, they take it to Apple, and then they pay Apple for a full replacement. And they've done this a number of times. So technically Apple still sells HomePods, and they still have a large number of them, and they will sell you them if you've got one to broken one to trade in. The thing doesn't even need to be like associated with your Apple ID. Like, you can literally just buy a broken one off eBay, complain to Apple, and they'll happily sell you another one. I think the replacements are $280 or $290. I think I see those prices kind of like fluctuate. No. They don't produce them anymore, and they haven't produced them since the original production run back in late 2017, early 2018. They had just the one production run. They had two different manufacturers, but just the one run. And when they stopped making them, and they continued selling them for like 2 years before they finally discontinued them. So you're going about it wrong. Don't ask them if you can buy a new one, just like out of nowhere. You got to get a broken one, or better yet, if you want to be real sneaky, just try to find another HomePod serial number online, like anywhere, and then just give them that serial number and be like, "My HomePod's broken. Can I buy a replacement?" and they'll be like, "Yeah, sure. Here you go." That's exactly what they did. They produced X number of units, allocated a certain number of them to warranty repairs. And keep in mind, in other countries like the EU, I think it is, like they've got like 5 years of a manufacturer warranty required by law. So Apple has to stock enough of these HomePods, at least in the UK, to cover like customer replacements for 5 years after the sale. That doesn't prevent them from just simply producing as many as they want and then giving you writing you a check if yours breaks within that warranty period and they run out of them. That keeps them within their legal obligation. They can pay you the price that you paid for it instead of just sending you a warranty replacement. But yeah, if you cry hard enough to Apple, or you just happen to get the right person that day on the phone, you can most certainly buy another one from them. And you don't even need to pay a visit to the Apple store. You get the right senior advisor and they'll email you a link to pay for it. And sometimes they don't even make you send the old one back too. So you get to keep both of them. It's great. I am almost completely clueless on right to repair and regulations in other countries. So I couldn't tell you. I know for sure that the 5-year warranty requirement has been a thing for a very long time. I mean, what was it, like 6 months ago, I think? As recent as 6 months ago, and keep in mind, even though 6 months ago, HomePods were long discontinued still. But out of nowhere, Walmart suddenly had stocked up like brand new HomePods, and I snagged one for myself. I was able to add Apple Care to it, and the funny thing is like I said, 6 months ago the HomePods were still very much discontinued, and here's Walmart strolling on in with a whole bunch of brand new HomePods that you can buy right there, add Apple Care to, and then have a it's funny. There's a lot of speculation and rumors as to this new upcoming model that's coming out. I've heard things all across the board from it's going to be in between the Mini and the Max, or the OG. I've heard things like it's going to be physically the same as the OG, but just with revised internals. I've heard it's going to be an updated Mini. All speculation until we hear it from Apple themselves. Alright, with all that rambling and such, did we forget anything? What do I want? I want to see them release... I'm hoping that the new HomePod model is physically identical or larger than the OG HomePod. If it's going to be the same physical size as the OG HomePod with revised parts inside, I hope that the parts are physically interchangeable. And like, I'm okay with it if like you can't connect an old logic board to the new amplifier board, or an old amplifier board to the new logic board. However, I would like to see at least compatibility with the cosmetic parts. So that way, when they release this new model, if it's my dream model, then you could go onto the self-service repair program. Because it's a new Apple product, they'll almost certainly add it to their self-service repair program, and you can buy parts for it. And not just that, but then we can go and we can take all the old HomePods, buy the new parts from the new pods, and stuff that into the old pods, and prolong the life of these for longer too. But that's a really big dream. Very optimistic. What's likely to happen, if Apple wanted to be a huge dick, is they'll make this new HomePod model, they'll make it like really similar to the OG here, but they'll change everything that they need to change to make it just barely not compatible to be able to swap parts between the OG and the new model. And that's what I have like a small feeling that they're going to end up actually doing here. They're just going to be a big dick. But that's my pessimistic outlook on it. My optimistic take is they're going to make a new model that will have plenty of parts compatible to swap around between the old and the new one. And again, totally understandable and reasonable and even expected if like the logic board and amplifier and power supply and such, if those kinds of things aren't necessarily interchangeable, right? But as long as like cosmetic parts and like subwoofer, for example, like there's no reason that they need to go and like put a different subwoofer in there. The one they put in there works perfectly fine, and you can't really do much more with the sound on this until you give it more room. So like a physically larger footprint. Okay. Let's do some sanity checking on this guy and see if it's all ready to go. Drum roll, please. We'll let that boot up and just double check that it still produces sound.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet. For more info. I'm having trouble.
Alright. We've got nice bassy sound. We got no popping. And our volume buttons are lined up nice and even. So, number 3 is fixed. We can set that to the side. And break out our 4th and final HomePod for repair today. So let's update our status. And let's unbox this final HomePod for today. Legs. Okay. What do we got here? Oh, and Reuven, if you want, when you come by and drop off your HomePod, because I'm not expecting Apple to bend over backwards for you, to be frank. They're probably going to tell you to F off, but in the likely scenario that they tell you to buzz off and you're on your own, and you want to drop it off at my place for repair, I can move my setup into the garage, and you're welcome to hang out and watch me take it apart and do some troubleshooting. You wouldn't be the first person to take me up on that offer, but you would be the second. I've had a handful of other local drop-offs, and only one other guy was interested in watching it actually get done. But that was pretty cool. Alright, who was it that made the joke about just having white ones in today? Because guess what? We don't got a white one anymore. We broke the streak. Oh. All right. Let's get this power cable off. And let's plug this in with our power cable. And let's just confirm the reported behavior here, which is no power. Yes, indeed. No power, no signs of life. We got the usual power draw at the outlet. So this is almost certainly a shorted diode on the amplifier. Classic. Well, let's get this torn apart. It's getting so hot in my room that these touch covers aren't coming off easily. By the time I get around it, it'll have stuck itself back down. So I gotta be careful. Don't want to crack them. Yeah, just the normal set alone is really nice still. It's got all the bits you'd need to do pretty much everything. And I mean, for HomePod repairs, you literally just need 2 different screwdriver bits. You need the T6 and the T5. And for 99.9% of your repairs, you only need the T6. The only time you need that T5 Torx screw bit is if you want to take the rubber foot off the bottom and completely remove your mesh. But for the majority of repairs, that's completely unnecessary. So T6 all the way. But the day I got my iFixit kit was, it was good. It was game changing. I could fix anything with it. I guess that's the point, though. I fix it, not I fix some of it. Bad joke, I know. I am full of bad jokes. And I can blame my grandpa for that. When we were kids, I remember my grandpa coming by every once in a while and like dropping off like milk and like a couple other things, just, you know, help our family get by. And he would bring a gallon of water with him every time. And he would put a spring in it. Like literally he would open it up and put a metal spring in it. And he'd be like, "Hey guys, I got you some spring water." And he didn't do this once. He did this multiple times. And it's like, "Thanks, Grandpa. Thanks for the spring water." He also does this thing where he buys like gallons of chocolate milk and then freezes it. So that way he doesn't have to worry about it going bad before he gets to it. Which is like, sorry, what? And so like another one of my fond like childhood memories is like taking the frozen chocolate milk out and letting it thaw out. And like he absolutely loved the idea of like chocolate milk that's like partially thawed, partially frozen, and you pour it out and it's like got the chunky like ice in it. I thought it was absolutely repulsive. It tasted normal. It didn't taste bad, but it just, the idea of my milk being frozen and then partially thawed and pouring it out in chunks, even if the chunks are just like frozen ice water from the milk, is very strange. No, we will not take apart Mr. Brick. Mr. Brick has already gone through enough. Mr. Brick has already been taken apart. We'll go ahead. We won't do it today, but we will certainly do. We'll definitely be doing a couple of minis in the future. But if you see right here, I wasn't paying attention during one of my repairs one time, and I had got the heat gun a little too close to that and damaged the mesh. But if any of my minis are going to be hurt, at least it was this one. But no, Mr. Brick will remain in one piece for today at least. Maybe if we only get 1 or 2 HomePods in tomorrow for a repair, maybe we can get to taking this guy apart just for fun. There's nothing we can do to fix him, but we'll find the time in the next few streams here to take him apart. my goal here today is to try to be all wrapped up here before 6 o'clock so I can go enjoy some dinner and have a few hours to catch up on emails and other work issues, and maybe finish I think I'm on the second to last season of Better Call Saul. I saw everybody like on Reddit a few weeks ago, they put out like the final season for Better Call Saul or whatever, and I hadn't watched any of it. I'd never watched any of it, so I was like, alright, I might as well cruise through this and see what it's all about. I like it so far, but I still have one more season to go before the big hubbub. But my tummy is making the rumblies. I'm getting hungry. And a hungry mind and body is not an efficient one. Man, and as if this one didn't want to put up a fight and take as much of our time as possible, you will come apart. Man, this one does not want to give up. Oh. Yes. Good. Yes. Give it up. Alright, this one's gonna be an off-the-table prize, so... Too easy. Well, it's like some of them, I wouldn't even need to pry it off with a flat head. I could just pull it off by hand. And then other ones, it's like you're spending 15 minutes with this flathead prying it up, and then another 10 minutes fighting it, breaking a sweat, and then you end up breaking the thing in half. Okay. Let's check the woofer here since we've got it. Feels good. Looks good. Smells great. Oh, you're talking about the adhesive here, like white adhesive that they use. It's got very inconsistent performance. I'll say that. Let's see, do we need to, that looks like a cluster right there. We'll just peel some of this excess off so it doesn't interfere with our seal when we go to reassemble this. Don't need to take all of it off, just make sure that it's when we put the basket back down that the basket can sit nice and even. So we want to make sure that the adhesive around it's not gonna cause it to not sit flush, but that looks good. Don't want to lose that screw. Oh boy. Trying to keep the sweat from dripping off my forehead into this HomePod. Oh boy. And I can't turn my fan up because then you just got a bunch of white noise on my microphone instead of my wonderful voice. And like part of the whole repair experience I try to give you guys here is that sweet, high quality screwdriver sounds. And you can't hear that over my fan. I would rather sweat and suffer than make you guys listen to a fan go brrrr for 3 to 4 hours during my repairs. I mean, you can probably hear my streaming PC as it is. You can hear the fan on it in the background. But I don't blame that poor little thing. It's just a teeny tiny little Intel NUC. It didn't ask to be a streaming PC, but it is. Frickin' CPU fan is constantly maxed out on the poor thing. I'm only, OBS is only using like 30% of the CPU. I'm gonna bet 1746K. But 1748K is an equally good guess. But I'm only guessing 1746K because you guessed 1748. I'm contrarian like that. All right, let's get the up close. Oh, 1752K. Interesting. Given that that's the first time I've ever seen a date code other than 1746 or 1748K, I'm going to do diligence here and just make sure with our multimeter here that this diode is in fact shorted out. Let's get our multimeter on in continuity mode. And let's see, what's the verdict? Ah, see that? Do you see that? The diode is good. So, our no power issue is not caused by a shorted diode on here. Given that, let's go ahead and switch back over to the other camera and let us... So also, remember when we first tested this and tried to power it on, we saw power draw at the wall. We saw a couple of watts. So I have no reason to believe that the power supply is at fault, or the fuse on the power supply, I should say. I mean, the power supply could be the problem, but the fuse on this is certainly good because we saw power being drawn at the wall. So we're going to take their amplifier and their power supply, and we're going to put our logic board on this and see if it powers on. And then we're going to try their logic board and see if it powers on with their logic board. I have a feeling we've got the rare case of a shorted capacitor on the logic board, not the amplifier. If you check out my website, nixfix.com or homepodrepair.com, and you go down to the common issues, scroll past the no power shorted SB diode. I've got a section for no power shorted capacitor on the logic board. I have a feeling that that's what's going on for this guy here, but let's confirm. So we're going to start with their amplifier and power supply, and we're going to stick our logic board on here and see if it powers on. I want to try to wrap this up before it gets too late here. Let's get a subwoofer connected for posterity. And then we've got our logic board, a good logic board with a display. So let's connect that. We know that this logic board works. So if it doesn't power on, then there's certainly something else going on here with the power supply and the amplifier. But if this works, then we'll take their logic board. Well, at least if this works, then we can confirm that their power supply and amplifier are functional. And then we'll put their logic board on here and see if it powers on then. So, what do we got? It's gonna work. Yeah, this works just fine. So their power supply and amplifier are in good working order. So let's take our logic board off. Let's get their logic board on. And then we're going to connect, let's see, let's try with one of my displays in case it's a display issue. That's exactly what we're gonna do. So we're just gonna sanity check and make sure that it is indeed their logic board that is causing the no power issue. We've got a known good display on this, and once we've nailed down that it is certainly the logic board that is the source of the lack of power, then we'll pop the shields off and start covering it in some flux until we find what's our likely short here. So powering this up with their logic board, but a good display, still no power. So, one thing that I do want to see, let's plug this back in. In the past, when it's been the logic board, I can normally hear like a quiet ticking sound coming from the logic board. So let's see if we can hear that. Yeah, I hear a ticking sound coming from the logic board, so almost certainly the problem here. Probably something shorted out on the logic board. Oh boy, finally, we've got an interesting repair for us on live stream today. Well, they're all pretty interesting in one way or another, but this is exciting. We haven't had something come across our desk here that hasn't been the pretty standard normal repairs in quite some time. So we're going to try to pop off these shields here. Let me get you up close. And we're going to get this cable off. No, don't worry about it, Sai? In any case, do not worry about it. I thoroughly enjoy a challenge and a nice little break from the usual shorted diode here. The good news is I've already got the experience having dealt with this a handful of times in the past, albeit it's not common, but we already know what to look for here, so this shouldn't take too long. And this is just gonna fly off out of the screen here as soon as we get it off and free. Come on. There we go. Exposed. And then we want to pop the other one on the other side here because I'm not sure which side this will end up being on. There we go. Alright, we're just doing a quick visual inspection. See if anything obvious pops out. But everything looks to be okay. So, here's what we're going to do. We are going to reconnect this to the amplifier here so we can power this logic board on. And we are going to, let's see if I can do this without breaking anything. We're going to power this logic board on. We don't need a display connected to power this on, by the way, so that makes it a little easier. But we're going to power this on and then start covering this board with a little bit of flux until we find something cause that flux to bubble and smoke. So I'm going to stick my ear really close to this again and see if I can hear better. Yeah, I can hear something coming from the board that's ticking. So check this out. We've almost certainly got a short here. We're going to grab our crappy flux because we don't want to waste our good flux on this. And I am familiar with two areas where this commonly happens. There's these ones right here. And then there's these ones right here, I believe. And it doesn't seem to be either of those. Let me pull up my website here really quick and double check if I had pictures of where they were. Alright, common issues, no power, short on logic board. Yeah, so that time it was like right over here. But that all looks fine. Let's just start covering all of these. Till we find something that makes this melt. This part right here is melting pretty quick. I'm not sure if that's the source of our problem or not, but we're gonna keep going around the rest of the board. Nothing seems to be reacting. So it doesn't seem to be anything on this side of the board, I guess. Let's flip this around. And let's check everything on this side of the board. Yeah, the CPU is getting warm. Can't find anything reacting. Let's unplug this from power for a sec. And then when we plug it into power, let's see if if it only shorts out for the first few seconds. We're also going to need to move our camera out of the way so I can get my ear closer and see if we can pinpoint where the sound is coming from, because that'll be a big clue. Okay. Yeah, strange. Nothing on this side. Let's see if we can try to listen to where this ticking sound is coming from when it's powered on. We're just going to use our finger at this point. Just feel around for anything that's getting warm. If we had a thermal camera, that would probably help us a lot here. Okay, so this area right here is getting really warm. Right here. So let's just check the other side. Yeah, that's where the power management's at. It's pretty much cool to the touch on this side. But on this side, it's very warm. So let's try this. If the flux doesn't want to show us where it's shorting out, then let's try some isopropyl rubbing alcohol. That stuff is much thinner, so it's going to evaporate and bubble much easier around any sources of heat. Nope, doctor, you're spot on. That's what we're gonna do here. So we're gonna try. We tried the flex, but the flex doesn't seem to be doing it for us. Probably because it's too thick. So we're gonna try dropping some ISO on here. Just gotta clean up all this flux first. And then we're also gonna peel off this foam here. In case our culprit is hiding underneath that foam, which I believe, now that I'm seeing it more closely without the foam in the way, I think this is probably going to be where it's at. Okay. Let us drop, well, let's get this powered on again here. And then we are going to drop some rubbing alcohol all over that and then see what bubbles. Still no signs. So, alright. Let's just grab our multimeter here. We're going to stick it into continuity test mode. Pull this off of our amp here so we don't accidentally short anything. Wow, those caps still have quite a charge. And let's just do some probing. So we've got continuity. Oh wow. Yep, we've got a dead short around here somewhere. Okay, so these aren't shorted. So these ones are all good, but these ones down here, these are all shorted out. Yeah, these 4 and these 3 here are all showing short. Alright, let's flip this around and just double check the other side here. Yeah. We've got a gnarly short going on here somewhere. Alright, guys. Unfortunately, I'm going to call it quits here for now. I'm going to need to spend some more time without the cameras and the heat bothering me here to focus on what exactly is going on here. We've definitely got a short on the logic board. The question is, where is it coming from? We're seeing a short across multiple components and no obvious signs based on our isopropyl and flux test here, looking for anything that may bubble up. So we'll need to spend some more time with this one, Psi. Apologies that we couldn't get it fixed right here, right now, but I will spend some more time with this tomorrow and see what we can find. I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to get this working again. I just need I need a little bit of time to focus on this. But there's a lot to probe and test here, so not sure if I'll be able to do this on stream tomorrow or if I'll try to squeeze it in during the normal daytime hours and try to find it. But interesting problem we've got here. Not the first time we've seen it. Probably won't be the last. And yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm getting the hunger burps and the hunger shakes here. So, like I was saying earlier, a hungry mind and body is not an efficient one. So, all right. At least we got the other 3 fixed up for everybody today. And we've got ourselves a good challenge for tomorrow. I hope you all enjoyed this live stream repair. Oh, before you leave, given your HomePod as an amplifier. So yes, Ruvim, here's what we'll do. You can bring it on by and we'll take it apart and first diagnose which part is actually wrong. If we find that your amplifier board is the source of the problems, we'll try to repair it. If we can't repair it, then I'll just go ahead and swap your amplifier board out for another one. That gets you a working HomePod again. That gives me another amplifier board with a unique issue to hopefully diagnose and repair, and then publish documentation on how to do that for other people. And in either case, the repair charge that I do for that will be completely the same. It'll be $60, whether we repair a board or replace it entirely. If you need a new subwoofer, which chances are your subwoofer is totally fine, that's the only time where I bump up the repair cost to $80. But 99% of other repairs, they end up being $60. So whether I repair the board or replace it. So, all right, guys. Now we are done here for now. And I hope you all enjoyed this live stream repair. Stay tuned for updates on what's going on with this guy and the emails that I've been talking to with a few people who might have some ideas on restoring bricked logic boards and what have you. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Goodbye!